Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. How many times have you told yourself, I'll start tomorrow? How many dreams have you delayed? How many opportunities have you watched slip by simply because the timing didn't feel perfect? Here's the truth. There's no perfect time. The clock is ticking whether you act or not. And one day, you're going to look back and either feel pride or regret. So the question is, which one are you choosing today? How many times have you caught yourself saying, I'll start when the time is right? Let me challenge that thought. What if the right time never actually comes? What if it's just a story we tell ourselves to stay comfortable? The truth is, perfection is a moving target. Conditions will never align exactly the way you want them to. There will always be one more reason to wait, one more doubt, one more excuse whispering, not yet. Here's the hook. While you're waiting, life is not, time is moving, opportunities are shifting, doors are opening and closing without asking for your permission. Every day you delay is a day you could have been learning, growing, building, evolving, and the cost of waiting is far greater than most people realize. It's not just lost time, it's lost potential. Think about this for a moment. The most successful individuals didn't begin when everything was perfect. They started when things were uncertain, messy, and uncomfortable. They didn't have all the answers. They simply refused to stay still because they understood something powerful. Clarity comes after action, not before it. You figure things out along the way, not before you begin. Another hook. What if starting today, even imperfectly, could put you ahead of 90% of people who are still waiting? Imagine the compound effect of taking small, consistent steps starting right now. One day turns into a week into a month, and suddenly you're no longer stuck. You're progressing. That progress builds confidence, and that confidence fuels even greater action. Waiting feels safe, but it's actually the riskiest decision you could make, because while you're protecting yourself from failure, you're also preventing success. You're trading growth for comfort, and over time, that trade becomes incredibly expensive. So instead of asking, is this the perfect time? Ask yourself a better question. What can I do right now with what I have? That shift in thinking changes everything. Because the moment you stop waiting and start moving, even in the smallest way, you take control of your direction. And once you take that first step, you break the illusion that you were ever stuck in the first place. And how often have you told yourself, I'll begin when everything is perfectly aligned? It sounds reasonable, even responsible. But what if that belief is the very thing holding you back? Here's a powerful realization. Perfection is not a prerequisite for success. It's often a disguise for hesitation. The right time you're waiting for is not a moment that arrives. It's a decision that you make. Consider this. While you're preparing, planning, and waiting for certainty, someone else is already moving. Not because they are more talented or more confident, but because they chose progress over perfection. That's the difference. The marketplace of life doesn't reward those who wait. It rewards those who act. Every day you delay, you're not staying in the same place. You're actually falling behind. Here's the hook. What if starting before you feel ready is exactly what gives you the edge? Because when you act despite uncertainty, you develop resilience, adaptability, and clarity. These qualities are not built in theory. They are forged through action. You learn what works by trying, you discover what doesn't by doing, and you refine your path through experience, not speculation. Think about the hidden cost of waiting. It's not just lost time, it's missed opportunities, unrealized growth, and untapped potential. Time is the one resource you can never replenish. Once it passes, it's gone. And the longer you delay, the heavier that invisible cost becomes. It quietly accumulates until one day you realize how much you could have achieved if you had simply started sooner. Another hook. What if the smallest step you take today could completely shift your trajectory? You don't need a perfect strategy, a flawless plan, or guaranteed outcomes. What you need is movement. Action creates momentum, and momentum builds confidence. And once that cycle begins, it becomes easier to keep going, to keep improving, to keep advancing. Waiting may feel comfortable, but it's a false sense of security. Growth lives outside that comfort zone. So instead of waiting for ideal conditions, create them through action. Ask yourself, what is one thing I can do right now? Then do it. Because the moment you start, you reclaim control, and everything begins to change from there. How many times have you told yourself, I just need more confidence before I begin? It sounds logical, but it's one of the biggest misconceptions that keeps people stuck. Confidence is not something you wait for. It's something you build. And here's the hook. Confidence is a result, not a requirement. It is created through action, not before it. Think about it for a moment. No one starts as an expert. No one begins fully prepared, fully certain, or fully confident. Every skilled professional, every successful leader, every high performer once stood at the starting line filled with doubt. What separated them wasn't how they felt. It was what they did. They acted despite uncertainty. They moved forward even when they didn't feel ready. And through that process, confidence naturally developed. Here's another hook. Action rewires your mindset. The moment you take a step, no matter how small, you send a powerful signal to your brain, I am capable. And that shift is transformative because instead of overthinking, you start engaging. And instead of imagining failure, you start experiencing progress. And with each action you take, you gather evidence that you can handle challenges, adapt, and improve. Waiting for confidence is like waiting to feel strong before going to the gym. It doesn't work that way. Strength comes from repetition, from effort, from showing up consistently. Confidence follows the same principle. It grows through doing, through trying, through learning. You don't eliminate fear before you act. You reduce fear by acting. Consider the cost of inaction. Every time you hesitate, you reinforce self-doubt. You strengthen the belief that you're not ready, that you're not capable. But the moment you take action, even imperfectly, you interrupt that pattern. You begin to replace hesitation with experience and doubt with evidence. Another hook. What if the version of you you're waiting to become is only unlocked through action, not thinking, not planning, not waiting, but doing? Because every step forward, no matter how small, builds momentum. And momentum has a compounding effect. What starts as uncertainty gradually transforms into clarity, and what begins as fear evolves into confidence. So instead of asking, do I feel confident enough, shift the question to something far more empowering. What action can I take right now? Because the answer to that question is where confidence begins to take shape. But how often do you hold yourself back because of the fear of failure? And that quiet voice that says, what if it doesn't work? It feels real, it feels powerful, and it keeps you exactly where you are. But here's the hook. Failure is not the real enemy. Regret is. Failure is temporary. It teaches, it shapes, it refines. Regret, on the other hand, lingers. It stays with you not as a lesson, but as a question that never gets answered. Think about this. Failure gives you feedback. It tells you what didn't work, what needs adjustment, where you can grow. It's part of the process, not the end of it. Every successful individual has failed, often repeatedly. What makes them different is not that they avoided failure, it's that they used it. They turned it into a stepping stone rather than a stopping point. Here's another hook. Regret doesn't come from the things you tried and didn't succeed at. It comes from the things you never dared to try at all. It's the opportunity you passed up, the idea you never pursued. The moment you let slip because you were waiting to feel certain, and the longer you wait, the heavier that feeling becomes. It doesn't fade. It compounds over time. Failure may sting in the moment, but it fades. It becomes a story, a lesson, even a source of strength. Regret, however, tends to revisit you in quiet moments when you reflect, when you wonder, when you realize what could have been. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't regret their failures nearly as much as they regret their inaction. Consider this. What if the fear you feel right now is simply a signal that you're about to grow? That discomfort, that uncertainty, that hesitation is not a warning to stop. It's an invitation to expand beyond your current limits. Because every time you face that fear and act anyway, you reduce its power over you. Another hook. Imagine looking back years from now, which will weigh more heavily. A few failed attempts that helped you grow, or a lifetime of wondering what if? That question has no resolution. It stays open, unresolved, and persistent. So when you feel fear rising, don't interpret it as a stop sign. See it for what it really is, a moment of decision, a choice between temporary discomfort and lasting regret. And the direction you choose in that moment shapes far more than just the outcome. It shapes who you become. What if everything in your life could change with a single decision? Not years of planning, not endless preparation, just one clear, committed choice. It sounds simple, but here's the hook. Your life is not shaped by chance. It's shaped by the decisions you make in critical moments. And most people underestimate just how powerful one decision can be. Think about it. Every major shift in your life, your career, your relationships, your growth started with a decision, a moment where you either moved forward or stayed where you were. The challenge is that these moments often don't feel dramatic. They show up quietly disguised as small opportunities, uncomfortable choices, or uncertain paths. And if you hesitate, they pass just as quietly. Here's another hook. Indecision is still a decision. Choosing not to act is choosing to remain in the same place. It may feel safe, but it comes with a cost, because while you're standing still, life continues to move forward. Opportunities evolve, circumstances change, and the window you had begins to close. Powerful decisions are rarely comfortable. They often require you to step into uncertainty, to trust yourself without guarantees, to act without having every answer. But that's exactly what makes them transformative. Because when you decide with conviction, something shifts internally. You stop negotiating with your fears and you start aligning your actions with your goals. Consider this. What if the difference between where you are today and where you want to be is just one bold decision away? Not 10 steps, not a perfect roadmap, just one commitment to move in a new direction. That decision could be to start, to change, to let go, or to step up. And once it's made, it sets everything else in motion. Another hook, decisions create momentum. The moment you commit, your focus sharpens, your energy aligns, and your behavior begins to change. You start noticing opportunities you once ignored. You begin taking actions you once avoided. And over time, those actions compound into results. But here's the truth. Nothing changes until you decide. You can think, plan, and analyze endlessly, but without a decision, nothing moves. So the real question is not whether you're capable, but whether you're willing to decide. Because that single moment of commitment has the power to redefine everything that comes after it. Have you ever considered what inaction is really costing you? Not just in time, but in growth, opportunity, and identity. Because here's the hook. Doing nothing feels harmless in the moment, but over time, it becomes one of the most expensive choices you can make. Inaction doesn't just pause your progress, it quietly reshapes your future without your permission. Think about it closely. Every day you delay a decision, postpone a goal, or avoid a challenge, you are not staying neutral. You are drifting. Life does not stand still while you hesitate. It moves forward. And with it, so do the opportunities you once had access to. What you call waiting for the right time is often just time passing you by. Here's another hook. Lost time is not the only cost of inaction. There's also the loss of momentum, and momentum is everything. Because when you are not moving forward, it becomes harder to start again. The longer you stay still, the heavier starting feels. Small tasks begin to feel bigger. Simple decisions begin to feel overwhelming. And what once seemed possible starts to feel distant. Inaction also affects how you see yourself. Every time you choose not to act, you reinforce hesitation. You subtly teach your mind that avoidance is acceptable, that delay is normal, that fear has authority. Over time, this becomes your default pattern. And breaking that pattern later requires far more effort than starting now would have required. Consider this. What opportunities have already passed you by simply because you waited too long? And more importantly, how many are you still delaying today? The uncomfortable truth is that opportunities rarely announce themselves twice. They appear, they wait briefly, and then they move on to someone willing to act. Here's a powerful hook. Your future is not only built by what you do, but also by what you fail to do. The risks you avoid today often become the regrets you carry tomorrow. And the gap between who you are and who you could have become as often filled with missed actions, not failed attempts. So when you feel yourself slipping into delay, recognize what is really happening. You are not saving energy, you are spending potential. You are not protecting your future, you are quietly limiting it. And the longer that pattern continues, the more expensive it becomes. Not in money, but in the life you could have lived. Have you ever noticed how overwhelming everything feels when you look at the full picture of your goals? The dream feels big, the path feels uncertain, and suddenly you freeze. But here's the hook. No one builds momentum by seeing the entire staircase. They build it by taking the first step, and that first step is always smaller than your fear makes it seem. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. When you are still, even the simplest actions feel heavy. But once you begin moving, something changes, energy builds, resistance weakens, and progress starts to feel natural. The challenge is not capability, it's initiation. Because the hardest part of any journey is not continuing, it's starting. Here's another hook. Your life does not transform in giant leaps. It transforms in small, consistent movements. One action leads to another. One decision leads to another opportunity. One attempt leads to experience. And over time, these small steps compound into something far greater than you initially imagined. What feels insignificant today becomes life-changing tomorrow. Think about this carefully. Most people underestimate the power of starting small. They believe progress must be dramatic to matter, but real success is built quietly through repetition, discipline, and persistence. Every expert was once a beginner who simply refused to stay still. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They created progress through imperfect action. Here's a powerful hook. Momentum doesn't require motivation. It creates it. You don't wait to feel ready. You act, and readiness follows. The act of doing generates energy, and that energy fuels the next step. It becomes a cycle. Action creates momentum, and momentum makes action easier. And consider this. What if the version of you that you're trying to become is only one consistent action away? Not a dramatic transformation, not a sudden breakthrough, but a simple decision repeated daily. Because the truth is, consistency beats intensity when intensity is temporary. What you do repeatedly shapes your identity far more than what you do occasionally. Another hook, starting small is not a limitation. It is a strategy. It allows you to bypass fear, reduce resistance, and build confidence through evidence rather than expectation. Each small win reinforces the belief that you can continue, and that belief becomes the foundation of long-term success. So when everything feels too big, too complex, or too far away, don't retreat into planning or hesitation. Narrow your focus. Ignore the entire journey for a moment and ask yourself a simpler question. What is the next small step I can take right now? Because once that step is taken, everything else begins to move with you. So I'll leave you with this. Years from now, will you be proud that you started? Or will you wish you had? The choice is yours. And the time is now. Start, move, take that step. Because if you don't start now, you will regret it forever.